talks about Esmeralda's barn as being a drop point for dead letter drops, or whatever they call them, where spies would meet in the darkness of rooms. So the Soviets would be passing on messages, and the Westerns would be the Western intelligence services would be trying to infiltrate them in the hidden dark corridors of Esmeralda's barn. And Esmeralda Gullan set that up.
All right, we are back again with Johnny Vedmore, continuing our exploration through some colorful 20th century characters, essentially from his side of the pond, be it the London area. And we're doing this exploration because the past informs the present quite often. And these characters, while they're relatively obscure to many folks, especially here in America, maybe they're more popular in England, there are actually ties leading all the way to current day or recently expired monsters, such as Jeffrey Epstein. While he was a monster, that doesn't mean there haven't been monsters prior. He is really just more of a reflection. So how are you doing today,
well,
John?
Eric? Thank you for having me back. I'm really excited. What you're saying about it being related to things like current day monsters is very much true. It's how I got started on the story in the first place. Was I was researching for One Nation Under Blackmail, and I was asked to look into the craze and the ownership of a bar called Esmeralda's Barn, and that's how this is how the whole series started. One night I sat down and I researched Esmeralda's Barn, and I was like, wow, this was a hotbed of Soviet action with, intelligence services using nightclubs in London's swankiest area and using these princes, low-down royals, to be the first intelligence agents that were spawned into this world of gangsters to manipulate people. And of course they used young ladies to do that, and they hid behind women quite a lot of the time. They knew how to do this sort of stuff, and that led me down this road. I went to bed on the night that I first read the stuff about Esmeralda's Barn, and I went to sleep. I tried to go to sleep and I couldn't. I was just tossing and turning. I just had a head in my brain the entire time. So I got up in the middle of the night and I discovered this slew of dead women that came after, and a load of unanswered questions. And then this series was spawned from that moment.
Awesome. It's funny. You mentioned hiding behind women. Is this often the case because we are dealing with, shall we say, felons who are probably not allowed to have a liquor license, or not allowed to own an establishment, or not allowed to do certain things because they've maybe led a life of crime? So they hook up with a female or a spouse or a wife, and they put everything in their name to hide their connection to whatever this place is, or also to maybe high tax implications.
That's a really astute observation that plays out, especially in the investigations I did into the Black Hand series. So Esmeralda Gullan was very much breaking that mold, one of the women to break that mold, and I think is why she had to go. But some of the other girls that followed later included people like Barbara Knox Marsh. And Barbara Knox Marsh, she was running the Blue Angel nightclub, but in actual fact, it was being run behind the scenes by other people. It could possibly be said to say that Esmeralda may have met her end because she had to do the same in London, because the pressure for these men to get into these powerful establishments, and trust me, the nightclubs in Kensington, Mayfair, Belgravia, these were the nightclubs that had the most powerful people hanging around, the most powerful people. This was the haunt of Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth when he was young, with Lord Mountbatten, and many other rich elites like George Huntington Hartford, etc. But they hid behind women, and this happened a lot in London. Ruth Ellis ran the Little Club. That was for Maurice Conley, and Maurice Conley was running girls all over London and doing all of the gangster stuff. There was Ronnie Dice was apparently involved in some of these clubs. He was a low-down gangster. Hod Dibbin, of course, would take over Esmeralda's barn eventually, and Patsy Morgan Dibbin would be put, his ward, his Pygmalion girl, would be put in charge of Esmeralda's barn, and she would be the face and the front of it, and it allowed them to get away with all sorts of sins.
Well, let's jump into it then. Can you introduce us to Esmeralda Gullan and explain her actual significance in the post-World War II
So again,
nightclub
really, one of the things that caught my attention when I started researching Esmeralda Gullan was that she, her father was, he was obviously of Chilean descent, but born in Wales. And her mum was born in Chile. And at the time, I was living between Wales and Chile. So I was like, wow, that's extremely interesting. That link is extremely, like, it connects with me. So but they grew up in Northern Ireland. And I think they would have possibly been seen as like in a foreign installment. The father was the head of some government department in Belfast. And they seemed like they were quite an affluent family. They had other members of the family, people like Campbell Gullan, who went off to become a big actor and was starred in Juices, one of the philo-Semitic movies that came before Goebbels' retelling of the story during the war, as known as the most anti-Semitic movie of all time, which I'd probably say isn't the most anti-Semitic movie of all time. They had they had a high reputation in their family, and the father was very strict, it seems, didn't want Esmeralda Gullan to do what she wanted, and what she wanted to do was the same. She wanted to be an actor. Campbell Gullan obviously inspired her, and she was desperate all through. I mean, when I looked through the newspaper archives, I found these stories of this young girl, Esmeralda Gullan, who's performing in all of these private schools in these little performances here and there. And she's obviously, from the age of about 8, 9, she's in the paper as performing. But her father said that she should do something that was more respectable for, and so she had to run away from home. And at 17 years old, penniless, as the story goes, she ran off to London and become a waitress, working in various nightclubs to slowly fund her career to try and get in the spotlight. And she was successful. She was beautiful and vivacious, and she was just the most stunning human you could ever come across. She captivated everybody. Everybody who met Esmeralda Gullan just fell completely in love with her. So she was in movie after movie through the 30s, and by 1937-38, a man called Ronald Noel Smith had fallen in love with her. He had fallen in love, but then the war started, and he went off to war, and they got based in Canada for a bit. And whatever happened in their relationship, eventually it petered out. I mean, war could do that, the change of situations and not being allowed to settle. But eventually they got divorced just after the war, in the probably about 1946, I think it was 47 when they got divorced. And she used the money that she had made here and there to go off, because she had been working for ENSA, which was the entertainment unit for the armed forces during the war. So she would have had lots of connections, and she did. She ran the stage with a lot of very important actors. But instead of going back to acting, she started renovating properties in London and become a businesswoman. She just went out there.
Is this when she started to go by Esmeralda Noel Smith primarily versus her original last name?
It was probably like that name gave her, it was much more royal sounding. It was much less foreign sounding. And it allowed her to start a new life, start again. She had been Esmeralda Gullan when she was in the cinema. Now she was Esmeralda Noel Smith, the businesswoman, but not just a businesswoman.
society woman
because that's what
type
she was
of...
targeted. I mean, she was fantastic at her PR. She knew exactly how to get what she wanted across to people. So the first purchase she made, I can't remember the lady's name, but Esmeralda had been in a movie that her husband had produced and directed, and she bought into a buttery, what was called a buttery, which I suppose was a place where people go to eat croissants and eat champagne, drink champagne, the type of posh end establishment. And it was called the Dover Street Buttery. Now, I went all around London to all of the different areas that Esmeralda Gullan had owned a place, just to get the feeling. And it's opposite the Ritz. Dover Street, when I was looking, I got to the Ritz and I was like, oh, wait a minute. And where the Dover Street Buttery must be. It must be around here. And it was literally straight across the road. I
can't help myself. But when you say the Ritz and you say buttery, I'm like, so that's where Ritz crackers came from.
Maybe.
I'm sorry, I just can't put it together. It's like, well, butter.
Maybe
anyway.
They were called, I don't know if it's a family name connected, maybe they were called the Ritz because of that sort of style of people eating light crackers with a little bit of something on while drinking their champagne or martini. And it was very much, Britain had won the war. But the world suddenly changed really quickly. And at the same time, all of these people who had got such prestige, especially highborns of society, they were looking for a way back in, to be an interest in again. And none of them were. So they were looking to be involved in the center of these. Most of them, all they did all the time was network and socialize. So she bought the buttery.
Well, you mentioned that the British won the war. No, I obviously, I've never been over there. I'd like to at some point. But from what I've read and seen is, yes, England won, but it still bore all the scars, all the damage, all the destruction everywhere. The whole country was kind of a wreck, semi-destroyed, versus the United States, where we got to have the parades. Everybody comes back here, we get the parades, everything's perfect, lost no property. If anything, we just profited because of manufacturing, etc. England, just like Germany, just like France, was a wreck. And that, I'm sure, was a big part of their trying to find their footing, because they may have lost real property, real money, and real value.
A great creation comes from great destruction. And London had been almost obliterated in parts. So it allowed people to go in, and people with investment like Esmeralda Gullan, she was buying property after property and doing them up, renovating them, making them anew. And that practice of just doing that on residential property and selling them off gave her investment into buying the buttery in the first place, but gave her the grand scheme. She wanted something different. She had something much bigger in mind, and by the 50s, the early 50s, she was going to achieve that. So she was focused in on then buying more property. She would buy the Monro Club, which was described as 2 mews cottages on Halking Court. Another place I'd been in the middle of the night recording while people were probably asleep in their beds, but it's a tiny little quiet. I thought it was going to be in a vibrant place with loads of people, but it wasn't. An extremely quiet mews property off Belgravia, where all of the rich people live, where you wouldn't even know something existed. You have to walk round a corner, down a street, round a roundabout, and you find this tiny little area that's kind of closed off. And this was where the Montrose Club was. And you could find amazing stories from the Montrose Club. Before she set up Esmeralda's Barn, there's this story that comes out in the newspaper, and it talks about Marjorie Huntington Hartford and George Huntington Hartford sitting around with Pietro Annigoni. So Marjorie Huntington Hartford was an actress. Pietro Annigoni was an artist. He would paint the Queen. He was literally painting the Queen at that moment in time. George Huntington Hartford, someone we'll talk about on another occasion, is the A&P grocery heir, who was one of the richest men. I called him the original Jeffrey Epstein. And another 8 people sitting around, and Marjorie Huntington Hartford was showing how good her skills were as a master forger. And so was Pietro Annigoni. Both of them were apparently master forgers. And so George Huntington Hartford wrote down his signature. And within the articles, you've got the actual compared the signatures written down there because it appeared in the newspaper. Marjorie Huntington Hartford did a forgery, and so did Pietro Annigoni, and no one could tell which one was the real signature. And so they were obviously they were showing off their skills at being, able to do nefarious things and how cool they were. It was a time like that. And the Montrose Club was a very quiet, very small, very elite establishment. It was set up to be a meeting point, is what I feel. Like she saw there was a niche in setting up multiple, but she wanted something bigger. She wanted the centerpiece, and the centerpiece was going to be not that far away from the Montrose Club. When I went to the where the Montrose Club was, I walked down. It's probably about a 6-minute walk down 2 streets before you get to where the site of Esmeralda's barn, which was originally the Torch Theatre. And had been she renovated into being one of the biggest elite nightclubs of the age. Eventually, the Cray twins would be part owners. Hod Dibbin would be part owner, along with one of the guys who did the Brinks Mat robbery as well. There was some really, 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 all of the rich, all of the elites went there. Some of the books describe, like Douglas Thompson's talks about Esmeralda's barn as being a drop point for dead letter drops, or whatever they call them, where spies would meet in the darkness of rooms. So the Soviets would be passing on messages, and the Westerns would be the Western intelligence services would be trying to infiltrate them in the hidden dark corridors of Esmeralda's barn. And Esmeralda Gullan set that up not to be that. She wanted something different. She wasn't interested in gangsters and mobsters. That didn't seem what she was interested in. She was interested in making the best, doing the best, and proving, I think, her father wrong. And it was clear her father and her didn't necessarily have so much contact afterwards. And I think that was something that drove her on. She wanted to prove everybody wrong who said that she should just be a housewife or etc. And so Esmeralda's barn was an extremely important investment. She actually had Pietro Annigoni, who said that Esmeralda Gullan was one of the most beautiful women he'd ever seen. And he had, while they were vacationing in Italy, so she was obviously in with the elite set all around the place, because she was she went to Italy and managed to get some of the best Italian chefs to come and work in the Montrose Club. So you can imagine the meals there would have been extremely pricey.
What year is this that she's opening
Esmeralda's barn? So this is 1954. So when she opened up Esmeralda's barn, she had Pietro Annigoni paint the mural on the wall. Now, this is a really interesting bit, because Pietro Annigoni is painting the Queen at the time. He's one of the best painters in the world. Yeah, he paints a mural for Esmeralda with his assistant, and then she instantly covers it up with a cartwheel Western theme. So she hides all of the mural. I don't know why she does that, but she basically turns it into like a Western themed nightclub. And for some reason, that works really well. And it brings in loads of people. But it also, I think, soon after, it's going to lead to her death.
Really? Okay. So I was noticing that she died in 1955, right? So we're talking about a really short window here from, I guess you would call this her peak. And then she dies. So what happened?
Well, who knows really, because some of the information is mysterious, but we know there's lots of discrepancies within the information. So Esmeralda Smith is in, I believe, the Monro Club with one of her sisters. I can't remember her sister's name. She's a hostess at the bar. And they go back to her house with a few gentlemen, a couple of gentlemen, and they're up all night dancing and being silly. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, this young lady says to Esmeralda, "I can't stay up anymore. I'm too tired." And she says, okay. She goes to sleep. She puts her to sleep in another room, apparently. She gives her some linen and like. And she pops her head in just before she goes to bed to say she's going to bed. She says goodnight and says, if you need anything, just ask me, and goes to bed. Now, they're then found in the same bed, gassed, on the edge of death. The young hostess survives, but Esmeralda Gullan, though she regains consciousness for a little bit later, dies in hospital.
When you say gassed, like somebody left a stove on in the house? What do you mean?
So all the newspapers reported that the flame had gone out on a little heater and that the room had filled with gas. But the police report shows that the policeman had turned up and the flame was still on. And there was some form of cut in the actual gas pipe. So the pipe that led at the back.
How did it not explode?
To be honest, a lot of it doesn't make any sense as well, because houses back then weren't exactly really tight. You'd have to. One woman who runs another nightclub later also dies of gassing, and she apparently tapes up all of her windows to make that possible.
Oh, so she intentionally passed away from it.
There's so many discrepancies within the story. So the gas board professional in the court case said that there was a cut in the pipe, and so the stories didn't add up straight away. And then what has to be noted is the people who take over Esmeralda's barn, this hot spot. Now, something interesting comes out as well after her death, because you have her will leaves everything to her executor of her will is a politician, a Labour politician in Flintshire in North Wales. And it seems very strange but he was married to her sister. So they executed the will. And soon afterwards, Hod Dibbin, the devil himself, and Patsy Morgan Dibbin would be the next people to take over Esmeralda's barn, and it would turn into a hive of gangsters.
This is completely out of left field, but I was thinking about the time period. In 1963, an individual, Sylvia Plath, exited the planet with gas as well. Was this a thing at the time?
Within a year and a half, about 6 to 7 girls die or go missing, who are all heading up the main nightclubs in only 3 areas of London. So you have a really interesting, and I think it started with Esmeralda Gullan, Ruth Ellis. So that happened around the same time. And Ruth Ellis knew Esmeralda Gullan. And Ruth Ellis ran a little club. And for people who don't know, Ruth Ellis was the last woman to be hanged in the UK. Yeah. So she was the last woman to be executed in the UK. That was one of the famous things. Wow. Now, she was in a relationship with a race car driver who was all with the elites, hanging around with the elites, and the little club was in the elite area, and all the elites went there all of the time, run by this gangster, and it was clear that they wanted her gone. She had someone called Linda Justice, who was her protege, who she had brought up from 17. She would die within this 1.5 year period too. She would take overdose, and everybody would say how sad she was. The Blue Angel was run by a load of gangsters, and with links to people like Stanley Setti, who was a local mobster at the time, or had been a local mobster who had his head chopped off and legs chopped off about 5 years before, and his brother Max Setti was running that club alongside Barbara Knox Marsh, and Barbara Knox Marsh was the one who was found where she didn't take enough the pills, Seconal, to kill her, and the lamp cord that was wrapped around her throat wasn't enough to strangle her to death, but the combination of the two killed her, and she was running another one of them. Like, there was all of these. Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was all within a 1.5 year period, and there's more as well. There's just more.
So who took over then? I mean, when you see that everything in common is that they either own or run these particular nightclubs, who wound up in ownership of the nightclub? Was it the Krays with all of them, or was it other people? Because the Krays came in later, right? Hod Dibben actually had the nightclub before the Krays invested in it.
There's really two important players that lead up to because the Krays were really stupid. Okay, the Krays were very good at being tough guys, very good at organizing minions, very good at doing their job in the East End, but the West End was something completely different. So it was, you couldn't enter it. If you enter into the West End from the East End, you'll end up in prison. What happened to the Krays? They went from the East End, they went into the West End, and that was their first entry into the West End club, was Esmeralda's Barn. And by that time, it had been run by Hod Dibben and an extremely important man called Billy Hill, who got away with the Brinks Mat robbery, which was the largest theft in the UK's history, where I think it was bonds or gold or something that they stole. But anyway, they stole a lot of it, and they all got away with it. Ran off to Marbella or wherever, ran off to some Spanish island. Billy Hill was a massive character. He used to hang around in Horace Dibben's sex parties. He was one of the ones who said, what Mariella Novotny did to people was crazy. He caused people's heads to go crazy. She could turn people upside down. This was the era of men realizing how powerful women could be as a tool. After before World War, men had sidelined nearly every single woman. When war happened, all of the men did their job, and suddenly the women run the country. And they discovered that the virtue that was attached to women, the automatic trust that people have with females, meant that they were the best fronts to run really tricky organizations. And often men would use them just simply as that. You're going to be used to run this place so I don't look dodgy. But eventually they had to manipulate these women. And then when the women found out they were being manipulated, they didn't like it, and then they disappeared. In this period, it was 1.5 years, and then all of these gangsters took over. People like Billy Hill and Hod Dibben and Ronnie Dice and Max Setti, and all of these were all involved in the clubs.
Well, from what you're saying then, it sounds like the women during the war got jobs and things like that, had the money, had the income, invested in these properties, and then possibly, and this is just speculation, but coincidentally, after the war, the men came back and the women were removed from their businesses.
The women who didn't agree with what the men were doing were removed and replaced with women who would do what the men said. They replaced them with women, at first anyway, with women who knew what was going on and would be able to accept it. But basically, they stole all of these, the post-war powerful women's businesses from them to do that, replaced them with drones who would do what they say. And then eventually they owned everything. Everybody was under their control. They had learned to influence people with sex parties, public sex parties. They were using that as collateral over big players, and all of the gangsters saw the money coming in, and they brought them all in. And the big players wanted to be hanging around with the gangsters, and the gangsters wanted to be hanging around with the royals and the sirs and all of these. And that's what Esmeralda's barn became. She would have been turning in her grave when she found out. The guy, what's his name? Stefan DeFay was one of the ones who was running Esmeralda's barn by the time the craze took over. And in 1960, so 5 years after her death, he took down, he revealed Antigone's mural to the world. And I think that was like the moment for me when it was like, Esmeralda's gone, and this new world the curtain was pulled back, and then everything was balls out because gambling got legalized in the UK, and Esmeralda's barn became one of the elite gambling dens of the mobsters. And of course, I mean, then as well, you've got Hod Dibbin's elite sex parties, the Man in the Mask parties going on at the same time. This was now in the 1960s, 61. And then what you've got is Hod Dibbin hanging around with the Beatles, Jimmy Savile, all of these sort of people, just unbelievable influence on the highest level. Everybody wants to be within the society. The whole clique is there, but that was born out of the hard work of people like Esmeralda Gullan, who's one of the most beautiful, interesting, amazing, astonishing women who is now not known at all, not spoken about at all. Her endeavors are not even noticed. And Lillian Pizzacchini writes in her book, and I honestly, I don't like go and spit at the floor very often, but she refers to Esmeralda as Esmeralda's barn as a lesbian club. It was just like as a way to kind of push off. Says she died. Just died with her accountant in Baker Street, which is actually Barbara Knox Marsh. So doesn't even do the research to look into who Esmeralda Gullan was. Esmeralda, she was one of she didn't just set up what was termed a lesbian club. She set up a vibrant place for everybody to be that was female dominated, and that scares people not only then, but it scared people today. Even the people researching it back then have to find reasons why Esmeralda Gullan was so powerful and so successful. They have to find reasons for it rather than looking at her life and realizing that she was a heroine. I mean, if you want to see someone who was really had nothing, went penniless, 17 years old, made her career in acting, helped during the war, who got out of a bad relationship during times when that would have been frowned upon, and created an empire that was fit for the top elites of the world at that time. She created that all herself with hard graft, with desire, with personality, and it all had to be taken off her. So my personal feeling is that she was killed off along with a lot of these other girls to take over these clubs. The evidence really has to be the amount of people and gangsters who then took over all of these clubs and started running it and what they became. And you can see that she was a good woman and surrounded by very bad sharks.
Well, this is a perfect place to wrap on this one. We will continue this exploration with other characters. Obviously, Mariella Novotny is coming up, but I don't know for sure. And folks, comment below if you want to hear it. I'm wondering if we need to do a little side episode exploring all of the women who mysteriously died within that 1.5 year period. Just a nice little digest episode about this person, this person, this person, this person, this person. Please comment below, and maybe we'll make that happen.